Today I want to talk about something a little bit different, because usually I focus on car news, but this time around I would like to talk about the new Grand Tour hosts. Like many people, I was pessimistic when it was announced that the show would continue beyond Clarkson, Hammond and May. And there was enough evidence to back up that pessimism, with the spectacular failure of Top Gear after those three left. So to what seems like make the same mistake again by rebooting the Grand Tour and asking what could possibly go wrong, it just seems either outright stupid or hopelessly optimistic. Nevertheless, seeing who the new presenters are and knowing that they have the blessing of the original trio, it does give me hope that this could work. I'm not familiar with their content, but from what I have seen, it does seem like they're genuinely passionate about doing a good job, and the dedication that they apply to their own channels on YouTube means that they should be able to pull this off. That said, they are stepping into the biggest shoes in the motoring industry over the last 20 years, and that would be a challenge even for the most prepared person. I don't think the issue will be the opinions of people online, and yes, as someone who's putting his opinion online, I agree that there's some irony in me making this statement. But I do think their problems will be more environmental than anything else, and let me explain. Internally, the most obvious and prevalent issue will be chemistry. Obviously, the two guys from Throttle House have chemistry already, but it's whether they can mix all three of their personalities into one cohesive unit that's going to be the challenge. I think part of what made Clarkson, Hammond and May so successful is the fact that they had genuine chemistry both on and off the camera. They were actually friends who just enjoyed doing the same thing together, and that helped a lot with turning the show into the success that it became. Just as importantly, they kept cars as the central theme. They were there because of their love and affection for cars, and even in the moments where things were difficult for them, they could still fall back on that as a shared enjoyment. Now, the chemistry part is largely within their control, so there's no doubt that they would have had a lot of discussions and that they will need to work on that throughout the process of filming and sort of getting to know each other and that. That is to be expected, and it may be a bit awkward in the beginning, but you can't just immediately show up and be perfect best friends with someone. It's going to take time, and I think that they need some leeway to be able to find their best fit. The area I think they're going to struggle with the most is the fact that we're in a very different era to when the original Top Gear began. If we ignore the climate of political correctness and what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do at the moment, things were a lot more relaxed in a way. You could sort of get away with it a lot more back then. And the other side of it was, if you did offend someone, the feedback wasn't almost immediate. So when Top Gear would do things, yes, they would get a lot of strongly worded letters that would say, I am person X and I don't like that this person said or did this. And that sucked and all, but there was a degree of separation because it wasn't that they effectively just did something and then immediately got the feedback. Whereas in the internet era, you very quickly get feedback on the work that you've done. The other side of it is that it was easier to find Top Gear back in the day. All you had to do was switch on your TV at a certain time and you knew they would be there, be it either for the initial broadcast or the repeats on various channels. Through this, they eventually were able to pull in over 350 million viewers worldwide, partially because of the ease of which you could access them. All you needed to do was make sure that you turned on the TV and put it on the right channel at a specific time. It was set, and the work on you as the viewer was minimal at best. The problem that you have with the time we live in now is with streaming. Everyone has their own provider, which means that people are probably having to pay a separate amount of money for whatever show they want. So that already provides one barrier. Secondly, you then need to be conscious in scheduling a time to watch it. So you need to make sure that everyone's got their schedules free, that everyone can go sit down on the couch and then we can all watch it together. Then you need to switch on the TV or switch on the PC, go to Amazon, find it, and then you can only sit down and watch. Those might seem like little things, but they add up in terms of friction to get to the show. Now, what helped a lot with the Grand Tour initially was, even though you still had that friction back then, you had the draw of Clarkson, Hammond and May. So people were willing to overcome that if it meant that they could get to see more of them again. And I think that the way in which that they left the BBC helped them as well, because in a way it kind of made it feel like they were stolen from us. And here was Amazon going, well, we'll give them back to you. So we were more willing to go seek them out. The other thing that helped it grow to so big is the fact that it had various segments, and that while it was a car show, it was more an entertainment show with cars in it. So you had a little bit of something for everyone. For people like me, you had the news, which is what spawned this channel. You had the car reviews, which is obviously for car people. You had these celebrities. All of these little things, even the silly challenges that they did, while they had a car theme, they still appealed to different kinds of people. Like, for example, I couldn't stand the celebrity stuff because I didn't care, because I knew they were just there to flog something. But you may find that people who enjoyed watching somebody's movies spots them on Top Gear and they go, okay, cool, I'll sit down and watch it. And then they find something else they like, and then they kind of, go on with that. And through that, they become a regular viewer. That is harder to do on a streaming platform. And without the pull of being a household name like Clarkson, Hammond, May, or having the pull of a certain person coming onto your show, I think that adds yet another barrier to entry for a lot of people. Now, to continue with that train of thought just briefly, while these guys are very famous within their own niches, the problem is appealing to the general public. You might be a big fish in your particular pond, but that's nothing compared to 350 million people worldwide, most of whom probably aren't car fans, but just enjoy the show for the entertainment that it provides. It's not a criticism of who they are or what they've built. Obviously, they've built amazing platforms and done fantastically well for themselves. It's just the reality of the expectations that have been set down by the original trio, purely for doing what they did, not actively necessarily trying to do it. Now, when you look at the fragmentation caused by online streaming platforms like Amazon, like YouTube even, when you combine that with TV-style expectations of numbers and such, it becomes harder for people who aren't household names already to make the impact that you could do in previous years. Obviously, it helps because the democratization of content creation has been a massive boost, because anyone with a cell phone can now go and effectively create a video that makes them famous overnight. But it does also mean that there is a fragmentation of the user base, because people now go towards what is interesting to them. Whereas with TV, there was a barrier to entry, but it also meant that you very likely had a large base of people willing to watch you if you made it to that point. Now, the issue with rebooting the show is that they're stepping into the shoes of giants, people who are widely recognized, mostly liked, and also had a very strong emotional send-off. So to then go back and say, well, actually, this isn't the end, while also admitting it's not the same thing anymore, is going to cause issues. And I think that's where the real challenge with this comes in. How do you make a successful show without having the global appeal of your predecessors? How do you stand out as yourself while maintaining the concept that was effectively built by the people you are replacing? Especially in an era where it's not as easy to be found. People don't sit around and watch TV together all the time anymore like they used to 10, 20 years ago when Top Gear was at its peak. So it's going to be difficult to pull in that wider audience and also convince them that you're worth watching when they know that you are a replacement for the person that they wanted to watch in the first place. And then obviously also not pushing it too far and trying to just imitate the person that you're replacing. Because if we just end up having Clarkson, Hammond and May 2.0, then you have to feel for these guys, because they're not then being lauded for doing a good job as themselves. They're being lauded for not being themselves. But on the other hand, if they do a bad job, then they'll just be seen as trying to copy Clarkson, Hammond and May and failing at doing that. So it's, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. They need to make sure that they can make it a success as themselves, not as the second coming. It's something that's very important to me, because as someone who started their channel off of a line from the original Top Gear, that being, and now the news, because that's how they would always start their news segment, and that was my favorite part of Top Gear. I do feel for them, because while I have created this off of the back of Top Gear, I'm not sitting here trying to be Clarkson, Hammond and May. I'm trying to be myself, just with the very loose concept of what they did. And so I hope that they get the chance to do the same thing with this program. So to wrap it up then, if I was in their shoes, I would be asking three things. Firstly, how do we ensure a natural chemistry between us, both on and off the set? Secondly, how do we set ourselves apart from the original trio? And lastly, how do we get a car/entertainment show to appeal to the masses in an era where the potential viewer base is more fragmented than ever before? I think if they can solve those three issues, we may be able to see the next 20-year car show dynasty. I just really hope for their sake that they're able to do that. They themselves have admitted that only an idiot would take this job and that it is a poison chalice. And I just hope that they have a lot of antidote prepared for whatever comes their way. And the last point I want to make is that I hope that the powers that be give them enough time to settle and to create a good show. And also that they set the bar appropriately low for their expectations. Because you can't expect someone new to come in and immediately hit the heights of the beloved cast that have just left. Otherwise, they might as well have only had one for the road and not come back for another.